So folks, to resume from yesterday, I beg your pardon, I don't know why it's doing this. There you go. There were some questions. I saw there was one that just came in now. We'll just go straight into the questions. The first question from Anna is assuming. I'm assuming you're saying this, Anna. Assuming that your mind is still clear in the inward, what's the difference between the inward and meaning? So maybe we should just go to the model, shall we? And then in meaning, you're still sort of having an engagement with the world. You're still, in a sense, interacting with people around you, but it's a more withdrawn interaction. It's a more sort of arm's length. It's not taking the people around you that seriously. So, but in the inward, and it's almost as if your attention's completely inverted. You have absolutely no interest in the social other at all. You've completely foregone. So in other words, in meaning, you still like to have your grandchildren with you. In the inward, this is you want to disappear into the forest. You want to go into chalwa. You want to have complete solitude. You want nothing to do with people. And that's really the difference between the two. It's a complete disengagement, and it doesn't necessarily last very long, but it's a complete disengagement with people. And it's actually trying to, in a sense, experience something which is beyond language. So in meaning, you're still sort of working, you're getting to understand how language has produced the world around you, how you're saying to yourself kind of sets up the world you're viewing. So you're still in a sense talking to yourself. The purpose of the inward is to go beyond language. It's experience beyond language. So experience beyond your socialization. Then Zuhaib, sorry, I didn't put your name down. I beg your pardon. But it's quite so I'm going to read the whole question. Stations of inwardness and gatheredness can come with an opposing force of guilt. Inversion mandates that you let go of the things you previously brought close and valued. Now, this is all true, people included, particularly the station of the inward, which is what we've just described. Does one feel guilty, or does one have to deal with that because it acts as a deterrent to the inversion and can last a number of years? So the short answer is, I mean, it's a long question, but the short answer is yes. One can feel guilty. So to go back to Anna's question, so you, where are we now? So I beg your pardon. To go back to Anna's question, what's the difference between meaning and inward? One of the things you have to deal with when you move from the meaning to the inward, particularly, is this idea, is having to forego this idea of having to be socially useful. And that can be something that you struggle with for quite a while. And you can see older people struggling with this. Sometimes in a sense of battling with their own sense of uselessness, but also sometimes kind of feeling guilty for just not having an interest in being useful. So yes, guilty is the thing you need to deal with in that period of your maturation. Then there was one that just came in, but I must admit I don't quite understand the question. So I'm just going to, is there a relation between the inward and the outward? With existential and relational, I really don't understand the question. So maybe the person who asked the question was Astor. Don't know how you pronounce that. Maybe as we go afterwards, you can ask again, Astor, and maybe it'll be clearer. I don't quite understand the question. So, folks, that's then it for the questions. Let's have a look at the next station. Just so we've done this every time. We've kind of gone from a previous. We just recapped the previous station, and then looked at the next station. So yesterday we spoke about the inward, and we said the inward is about a radical withdrawal. So prior to this, so all of these stations, from the insignificant to the significant, fundamentally attention is principally dedicated to the outward. So you're all on that side of the window of perception. Then in meaning, you're stepping back from the window of perception, but it's kind of like it's like a half a step in. In the inward, it's a radical taking, it's a complete flipping of attention, complete flipping into the inward, which is why when you look at that person from the outward and that flip has become, in a sense, dysfunctional, when you look into their eyes, it's like there's nobody home. The person is just, their attention is completely absorbed by what's going on the inside. Also, the station, we would describe the station as the station that relates to fana, so which means annihilation. And so it's actually a very short station. This is the station of the significant could be like 20 years, most of your adult life. The station of meaning could be, if you're unlucky, a couple of decades. But this station of the inward is actually, it's very short. It's actually it's an interstate between meaning and gatheredness. It's the crisis that precipitates gatheredness. As we said, in the station, you're basically foregoing your sense of identity because you're foregoing all your conditional motive, which means you're foregoing your conditioning, which means you're foregoing your sense of who you are. You're burning the mask. You're burning the persona. You've got to have it all. And so the outcome of that is a complete kind of disavowing of significance. It's almost like a permanent sajda. It's like an irrevocable sajda. I've put my face down for the last time. I'm not going to bring it up anymore. I've completely disappear into insignificance. That complete foregoing of all significance produces the only finally stable state, and that's the state of gatheredness. So if you can imagine, on the one hand, the alienation of adolescence, this extreme sense of separateness, gatheredness is extreme connectedness. So where separation is lonely, gatheredness is companionable. But what you have to understand about this companionability, this is not companionable with other people. A person in a state of gatheredness is actually companionable with the whole of existence. The only way that we can kind of get access to the state, the experience of the state, is this must be kind of the state that's true for the embryo. So prepartum, that state of swimming in a soup in a matrix of warm amniotic connectedness and pleasure. So it's a deeply ecstatic state. This state is the only stable state. So it still plays two drums, but there's no opposition between the two drums. And what we mean by that, your form and your meaning in this state are the same, because your motive is no longer conditional. So let's say, for instance, you have a conditional motive, and you're walking up the hill. This is the simplest example. You're walking up the hill to get to the top of the hill. Your outside and your inside are not the same thing. When I examine your outside, your form, as you're walking up the hill, I see a person walking in the moment. When I examine your inside, your intent is the top of the hill. So your outside and your inside don't correspond. That's the problem with all conditional motive. The outside and the inside don't correspond. In the state of gatheredness, you've completely foregone all outcomes. You are not doing anything to get anywhere because you already have it all. You've arrived. There's no place to go to. In other words, your outside and the inside are the same. Whatever you do, there's a sense of spontaneity. There's a sense of immediate alignment between your inner reality and your outer reality. Your intent is completely unconditional. In other words, nothing is done for the purpose of achieving an outcome. This person's, still describing it from an intent point of view, this person's intent you can no longer describe as an emptiness that seeks to be filled. If you think about how the word intent works, I intend to do something. As soon as I say I intend to do something, or rather I'm doing this thing in order to achieve that, my intent is that. It means that there's some lack described here, which is going to be satisfied by that, which means my intent is an emptiness that seeks to be filled. When you have completely foregone outcomes, then there's nowhere to go to. You are full. That doesn't mean to say you don't act, but your action isn't to get anything. Your action is to hand over, to overflow. So in other words, your intention isn't an emptiness that seeks to be filled. It's a fullness that seeks to be emptied. Now, what this means from an attention point of view is that it means an absolutely radical attention to the situation that you're confronted with in the moment that you're in. There's no attention. So in other words, your experience of the moment changes. For most of us, we experience the moment as a small thing, and we have this vision of a timeline. The past is a big thing, and the future is a big thing, and the moment is this like blip that I'm in. Once you're in this state, this thing before and this thing don't exist. The only thing that you have is the bubble of the moment, the bubble of here, and the bubble of now. The reason why this experience is ecstatic, if you've ever been so why is it that people want to get drunk? You're just using alcohol as an example. Because when you're drunk, you have this sense of your tactile experience is velvety. You're sort of floppy and loose. Your sense of boundary isn't very distinct. And it's initially, I mean, if you've done too much of it, then it gets deeply unpleasant. But initially, it's a very pleasant experience. And that's also with a lot of drugs, which is why people want these euphoric experiences. Euphoric experiences dull the sense of distinction between self and other and produce a pleasant experience of the self being connected with other. So that's the first attribute of this state. Your actual physical experience of being alive is so deeply pleasurable that you don't want anything else. It's just this breath is so delightful. Sitting on this chair is so wonderful. Touching the surface is so deeply pleasurable. Why would I want anything other than what I've got right now? Everything is just absolutely pickled in ecstatic experience. There's no sense of separateness. There's also, as the word gatheredness implies, there's a sense of embrace. But understand, this embrace is not an embrace just sort of like a group hug embrace. This is, you feel yourself being gently embraced and held by all that is. All that is your benefactor. All that is your loving companion. All of that is your most beloved protector. So it is like you're deeply companionable with the chair you're sitting on. You have a living relationship with the door you've just walked through. It's like your entire life experience becomes poetic, becomes beautiful. your brushing of your teeth becomes an exercise of panache, of poetry. So who wouldn't want to live like this? I mean, this is, this is a deeply desirable state. This state of living in such a way where the stars become your companions and your trees are your friends and the rocks greet you as you walk past and the clouds are your confidants. Who wouldn't want to live like that? This is the highest status of the human being. The highest status of the human being isn't just to be a good citizen. The highest status of the human being is to be the friend of all that is. The beloved, not just the friend, the beloved, the dearly, the deeply, the most beautifully, the most ecstatically beloved of all that is. This is who you really are. You are the pinnacle of existence. All that has existed prior to this, everything that exists right now that isn't you, is yearning for you, is wanting to take you in its embrace. And that experience of coming home to that experience is why he made you in the first place. He made you to be the vice regent of all that is, to sit on this incredibly grace state, encapsulated by it all, loved by it all, affirmed by it all. Alhamdulillah. All right, folks, let's look at questions. So, Zainab, does that imply that even wanting to reach the state is an obstacle? It is, unfortunately. That's why. So because we can only sort of paddle the canoe of intent, and intent itself is the problem. In fact, the final achievement will always happen from left field, will never be predictable, and is not in your hands. So another way of seeing this is that you're at the throne room and you're knocking, and then you finally give up in a state of despair. And the moment you've truly given up, the door opens and you're let into the throne room. Alhamdulillah. Zaida, when in this state, could this then cause a breakdown within relationships? Oh, yes, indeed. In fact, the breakdown, Zaida, is not just in the state of gatheredness. The breakdown could happen in all of the last three states. In fact, the most profound would probably be in the state of the inward. Yeah. So Afia, could we say that the journey of attention starts with using your sensory perception to understand form and meaning, and advances into realizing inward attention through your ruh and qalb? Okay, so are there? I think there. So. So think of your attention as a light, and it's primarily, for most of your life, it's been shining out into the world. So here's the window of perception, the light of your attention's shining through the window of attention out into the world out there. From the sixth state, you start to pull a little bit back from the window and you start recognizing things that are on the inside that are now kind of presented. So here's the window. Initially, up until the state of the significant, the light of your attention is right up against the window looking out at the world. the state of meaning, it starts to pull back, it starts to recognize just how profoundly stuff that's happening on the inside before the window of perception, they now become objects to you. So because the light is here. So some of the things that are now objects to you, you start seeing just how profoundly those things have defined the world that you see. What's happened with the inward is that your attention has done this. Your attention has flipped back on itself. It's finding out where it's come from, and it finds out that the thing that it's come from is fathomless, is indescribable, is without limit, is deeply alive, is velvety pleasurable, is like dark velvet, like, and it is the divine presence. And it's the thing where this attention is coming from. So what one calls that, I'm not entirely sure. So yes, you could call it ruh, qalb, maybe, angazmina. That's a way of saying profoundly, I don't know, because that's saying it in Zulu, angazmina. But the circle doesn't close completely, because I think that the state of the newborn infant is the state of the insignificant. And in the state of gatheredness, you actually go back to the physiological experience, the real experience of the prepartum child, a prepartum embryo. It's embryonic in the experience. It's not because the infant still. I mean, the newborn suffers. The person, the embryo doesn't suffer. So it's not in that sense a full circle. You don't come back into the world. You stay gathered, but you might still be very conscious of the world out there. Kindly share how this model was developed over time. This has been a very long journey. Feiruz will attest to this, the length of this journey. So it started off probably in the mid-90s when I started reading and struggling with Sheikh Ali Al-Jamal's book, The Meaning of Man, who many of you might have read on my kind of sort of recommendation. It's an immensely difficult book. It's, I mean, but also Sheikh Fadlala told me at the time that the reason why the book is so difficult is because it is a very poor translation that we were working with. We were working with Aisha Bewley's translation. There have been subsequent translations. Anyhow, so he said to me, you've got to work out a key to that book because the book is too inaccessible. And so I struggled for a long time with trying to work a key, find a key to really kind of that encapsulates the essence of the meaning of man. And so my first pass over this, you might see previous versions of the model are more complex. I mean, each station, in a sense, is called something different from its apex. So we called, for instance, the insignificant, what we call the station of the insignificant, the station of the slave. What we called the station of the significant, the station of the Lord. Over a period of time, so there was a long period of clarifying, and the clarifying was rooted in two things. It was rooted in me really trying to find a way of understanding what is happening to me in my own journey. So how does this map actually relate to my own journey? And also trying to explain it to other people. So I must admit, it's only, I suppose, in the last year that I'm kind of reasonably confident that this thing is useful, because what's really interesting about this, there's an internal consistency which isn't by my own ingenuity. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. This station of form, which is the station of the crawler. Remember, this is like the sort of the terrible twos, that kind of the kid who's sort of beginning to explore their own form, is pinned between the station of separation and gatheredness. And the gatheredness is the conservative drum, separation is the progressive drum, and they play that drum. That became apparent. The truth of that became apparent after, so after the categories were there. So in a sense, what I'm saying is that the model is proving to be predictive to me in a way that wasn't apparent. Sort of inductively. I mean, I didn't go and do lots of psychological research and produce these categories. These categories sort of became apparent, and then I went and looked at it, but that doesn't make sense. This fits. Yeah. Miriam, if one does have, before attaining the state of gatheredness, does the journey of the soul continue without physical body? Okay, so thank you, Miriam. My short question is, I have no idea. This is like saying, after you've actually got the entire universe in your pocket, is there more? Hell, well, maybe. But let's start with getting the universe first. Ali, I'm really not too sure what you mean by this. Is there a chance of re-embarking this journey from this point forward? Are you saying, can one understand what's gone before by this discussion? I think you can just go and watch the videos. Dies before, not does. I'm assuming that's dies. It dies before one dies. So dying before one dies is the state. So fana in our language is the inward. Baqa, going on, is the state of gatheredness. Yes. The last two states are the second last state, the inward, is not a constant. It's very much a way station. It's very much the interspace between meaning and gatheredness. Gatheredness is the only one that is constant, I think. Zainab. Actually, now that I reflect on it, I'm not sure. You see, one of the disadvantages of models is they tries to get one to be absolute, and I think that people in the station of gatheredness can still suffer. Yeah, but I mean that's a story, I suppose, for another day. Does the circle continue for the soul that hasn't reached gatheredness? That's from Afia. Does the circle? Does the circle continue for the soul that does? Afia, I'm not going to put my head any further above the parapet than to say I think so. But if you ask me why do you say that, I refuse to defend myself. Meaning, can you get glimpses of gatheredness without having? Yes, I think so. Yes, absolutely. And we all do. So you remember I spoke to you yesterday. It was yesterday. I said, we have these experiences. This kind of like one night, on the roof of the house on your own, and suddenly being just absolutely rapturous with the experience of looking at the stars and the velvet of the sky and the dog barking in the distance and this one can have glimpses of it. Absolutely, one can have glimpses of it. Oh, right, Ali. I see what you mean. So I suspect that I suspect that only the dead have arrived. And what I mean by that is that if you're physically not yet dead, there's still something to be explored. So while you're alive, your life is a little bit like an ongoing tawaf, that it's the same reality, made just deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah. Thank you very much, folks. That kind of does it again for the day. As always, great fun and joy expense. So I've sent you invitations to one last interaction like this for tomorrow afternoon at this time. And so you remember I indicated that maybe we should have a proper integration of the attention and the intention model. So I'd like to do that if you're sort of amenable to the exploration. I've given you the invitation. If you're interested, please do join us tomorrow. Thank you very much, folks. All the best. Assalamu alaikum.